Well, good afternoon, everybody. Seems like just moments ago we were here. Uh, you know, this is an interesting one. It actually brings back flashbacks of introducing the first class at the Holiday Inn back when it was, in February, and it was a really big deal. Some of our coaches are still trying to figure out like what to do without practice and without a game coming, and so we'll do the best we can here. Ian's going to be a far better resource for the class and the details of the guys and those kind of things. But I will make comments on a couple things. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of hard work over the course of a year to a year and a half. All the way from administration to compliance. To academics, to the admissions, and then obviously the boots on the ground are the football staff. And so, today's a celebration of, adding pieces to the culture, to the community. We're going to add 21 student athletes, 19 multi-sport athletes into this great culture, into this great football team. But I do think it's really important that everybody realizes the time and effort that went into it. Matt Entz, leadership was unbelievable. It just, again, I'll come back to the phone calls and talking to these student athletes and introducing myself and finding out where they are in the process, what questions do they have, and those types of things. And it was pretty obvious that we've got a group of kids that chose Fargo, chose North Dakota, and want to be Bison. All three of those elements, and obviously the institution and wanting to get an academic experience that's first class. The staff, you look at what the staff has to do, and it's a big piece of, interviewing for a head coaching job. But, they start out by building the board, and then they go out there and they try to find guys to add to the board. Okay, and then the second thing is like, well, who can and who can't? And there's an elimination process to that, a gathering of information, countless text messages and tweets, and evaluations, putting guys up against other guys, and then getting them on campus includes a lot of effort and things from, again, the community, the recruiting staff. And so just, Matt Entz did a really good job. This staff put a lot of effort into putting this class together. I want to thank the former players for such a great product. It's hard to recruit if you're not a winning organization, and we're a winning organization. These guys are winners, 5 state champions in this class. When we talk about winning in a winning culture, you talk about leadership. There's 15 captains, amongst these 21 individuals. And then, I think a long time ago this started, but it's awesome to see that 18 of these guys came to camp to be evaluated and or to be evaluated again, or to learn more about us, evaluate us as coaches, or to come to Fargo and just visit and have fun playing some football. And that's representative in this class. We are bringing in 10 offensive players. Okay, and we're bringing in 10 defensive players and then 1 specialist that's a long snapper. I think we want to make note that 7 of these kids are coming from North Dakota. And, how they're getting here, and those kind of things, or are they on full scholarship, that really doesn't matter. We're a product that this state believes in, and it's really important that we start home and in this region. Minnesota with 6, South Dakota with 2, and then there's 5 states that have 1 individual prospect coming in from Nebraska, Colorado, Texas, Indiana, and Virginia. And so you could see it was clear that winning, leadership, multi-sports still mattered to Coach Entz. It mattered, back in 2006, and the focus hasn't changed, and he did a good job with that. 19 multi-sport athletes, 12 play 3 sports or more. So with that being said, I'll be open for questions, but I want to turn it over to Ian. And I do want this to be known. These last 3 days have been challenging, and without Ian, in a lot of ways. I mean, this young man has a bright future, and I want to say thank you to him. And again, to the administration for time is flying by, and we've knocked down some real important tasks, and Ian, congratulations on the 2024 class.
Appreciate it, Coach. I want to start out by, just thanking our staff, not only in the football offices, but over here in the shack, Matt Larson and his staff, and just the leadership through this process over the last couple of weeks. From a recruiting standpoint, when you're hiring a new head football coach weeks before signing day, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. But kudos to our staff continuing to work through these weeks, making sure that we can put this class together. And then kudos to Coach Polasek coming in and really helping make sure that this class could be possible. And so, kudos to everyone involved in that process. But from here, I really would love to just work through this list and go through alphabetically, kind of talk about each individual, and then we'll open up for questions at the end. So we'll start with Logan Conklin from Minot, North Dakota. Logan is a young man that a lot of people got to see compete throughout this year in the state playoffs. A standout performance in the state championship really helped lift Minot to a state championship. And a young man that came in and competed at camp, played multiple different positions, really had to work through his senior year, was a full year evaluation for our staff, and exciting to see, the performance that he put together for a senior year, and especially in his last high school game in the Fargo Dome. We see many more of those to come for Logan. The next one, Talon Eady, a young man from out in Virginia, spent his early days of his life in the state of Wisconsin, a familiar name to many. Talon's brother, Tyree, was a basketball player here at NDSU. And so, Talon was a young man that had an understanding of the expectations and the culture here and the community that he was coming into. And, just really excited, a 4-year starter at his high school, a 2-time captain, a great leader, and a young man that, again, understands the expectations and the standards that he's walking into. Was the defensive player of the year as well at his high school. And so played both ways as a wide receiver and a defensive back, and so excited about the athlete that we're bringing in this young man. Next one, another familiar name from right up here on the north side of town, Peter Haugo from Fargo North. Peter, was a standout on both sides of the ball, playing running back and linebacker, and got many questions over the last year of what is Peter going to come in and play. And so Peter is going to be a linebacker here for us, but is going to be an outstanding athlete, going to be a young man that's going to find a lot of different ways to help us as a football team, not only on special teams, but on defense as well. Peter was the 2A senior athlete of the year in the state of North Dakota. Helped lead his team to a state championship and a really impressive senior year that he put together, not only as a running back, but as a linebacker as well. And Peter's a 3-sport athlete. So again, a fantastic athlete that we're bringing in, and a very competitive kid. Fun story that to share about Peter. Peter was our first commit in this class. Peter was really a huge connecting piece that brought this class together. A young man that reached out to other recruits, helping, hold this class together, put this class together throughout the process, but who also came to camp still after being committed and competed his tail off for 3 days. And so excited to see that coming to the Fargo Dome in years to come. Next one on the list, coming from the state of Minnesota down at De La Salle High School, Ray James. Ray is a big, long athlete from down in the Twin Cities, 6'3", 195 pounds. Ray, another multi-sport athlete, playing basketball and football at De La Salle. Ray was a 4-year starter at his high school and a 2-time all-conference winner. He was also a 2-time captain. So again, that leadership piece, not only on the football field, but on the basketball court as well. So excited about the athlete that we're bringing in, and another Twin Cities Bison joining the program. Reese Kessel, another young man from the Fargo area, from Fargo South. Reese was a guy that came into camp, and his name just kept climbing the list. Every single day, Coach Roll kept coming in and pounding his fist on the table about the competitor that this young man was at camp. A 6'6", 210-pound tight end prospect from right here in town. Could not let this young man slip our hands. And, anyone that's a Fargo basketball fan saw, Reese went on and averaged a double-double last season. So extremely great athlete in both sports. So excited about what Reese is going to bring to that tight end room in the future. Staying on the local side, Grant Knodel from Cheyenne High School. I think the first thing to point out about Grant is not just a long snapper. Grant played defensive end at Cheyenne High School, And, anyone that's watched, our special teams, our specialists, when they're out there on punt, they got to be the fence post in our punt scheme. And so excited that this is a young man that had 53 tackles his senior year, going to be a guy that's going to run down and help us out and continue to be a great athlete, not just a long snapper, but an athlete within our program. And, a guy that knows about winning, was a 3-time state champion in baseball and then was also a football state champion just a year ago. So, and another guy that's got familial ties to the program here, his older brother Jacob, a member of the cross country and track and field team here at NDSU. So again, understands the standards and expectations that are going to come with being a member of this athletic department. Going out east to Indiana, an area that maybe doesn't show up on our roster all too often, but McLean Miller was a young man that showed his interest really strong last spring, reaching out to our staff and understanding what he was walking into at North Dakota State, what kind of offense he was going to be, what kind of program, and those were the things that he was looking for. Those matched up with, what he wanted in a university. And so McLean came out to camp this summer and earned his opportunity here at NDSU. A 3-time letter winner at his high school and a captain for his senior year. Again, coming from a program that understands winning. Back-to-back section champions for his high school, and McLean's also an all-conference athlete on the track. So again, multi-sport athlete, a young man that's a bigger back at 6'1", 225 pounds. Going to be excited how Coach B and the rest of the offensive staff find ways to utilize him in the future. Getting back to the state of North Dakota, Coy Okeson, a standout athlete in multiple different sports throughout his time. A team captain the last 2 years at Bishop Ryan High School, 4-time all-conference winner, and a 3-time all-state performer. Coy, unique story about Coy. If you look on the rosters at Bishop Ryan High School this year, Coy's not only a wrestler, but he's also playing basketball this year. And I know when Coach P called him just a couple days ago, Coy was leaving from one practice to go to the next and just excited and fired up. And so it tells you what kind of competitor this kid's going to be in the Ram room, and really excited to see what he brings. Next one, going back to the state of Minnesota, from down at Buffalo High School, Wyatt Osterbauer. And Hunter Pontius stopped by the office today, excited that the Buffalo tradition is going to continue in Bison football with Wyatt joining the team. Wyatt's a big 6'4", 215-pound pass rushing defensive end. A young man that knows how to get to the quarterback, as a 3-year starter and a captain and team MVP for his high school this last year. Wyatt racked up a multitude of accolades throughout his career. Got the opportunity to play at US Bank Stadium just a couple weeks ago in the Minnesota All-Star game. And so excited for him to join the Alley Cats and Coach Gazer and Coach Phelps' group here in the future. Will Rosenmeyer heading out to the West Coast, out in Colorado, an area that we started to dive into this last year in recruiting, finding more and more ways throughout the country to dive into hot spots in football, and coming from Highland Ranch, Colorado, just outside of Denver. A 3-year starter at corner, and a young man that found his way up to Fargo a multitude of times throughout the spring, and then back up for camp again this summer. And one of the biggest things that we saw in Will throughout his time at camp was just how competitive he was in every single drill that he was doing, and excited to have him joining Coach Walker's group and the future as a part of the Wolfpack. Going down to the state of South Dakota, Rylan Satter, Swiss Army knife for O'Gorman High School. Rylan, I think, played every offensive skill position this year at O'Gorman High School, while also playing a little bit of defense as well. If you look at his statistics in the press release, pretty impressive what he's done throughout his career. Put up gaudy numbers throughout his entire time in high school, and a 4-time all-conference winner as well. So excited for what Rylan's going to bring. Rylan is a multi-sport athlete, set multiple South Dakota State records, and going to be joining the fullback room with Coach Roll, but going to find a multitude of different ways to get this young man on the football field to help us out. And another guy with familial ties to the program, with his uncle Justin Frick as a defensive lineman here for the Bison back in the transition years from 2003 to 2006. Back in the state of North Dakota, out in Williston, North Dakota, Isaiah St. Romain, 6'1", 175-pound wide receiver. Isaiah, again, one of those early commits in the class. Really fortunate to pull in 3 North Dakota commitments really early in this class, and Isaiah was another one of those members of the class that was just a connector. Him and Peter were on their phones all the time, reaching out to other guys within this class and helping our staff through this process. But Isaiah is a young man that played all over the field for Williston, was out at camp competing at not only wide receiver but at defensive back, and a bright future for this young man in the wide receiver room, but all over the field for us. Going to be a great special teams player and a great athlete as an addition to the program. Next one coming from back in the state of Minnesota from Ricori High School, Will Stile, 6'2", 195-pound safety, young man that played quarterback for his high school. Racked up over 2,000 all-purpose yards this year as a quarterback, leading his team to a state championship appearance, and was a Mr. Football finalist for his high school. Extremely excited about what Will brings as an athlete. As many know, we found a lot of different ways to convert quarterbacks into safeties here at NDSU, and I think Will's going to be another one in that long line and storied history there. Will, another one with familial ties to the program. Will's older brother plays on the baseball team here at NDSU, Jack. And so, again, another young man that understands the expectations and the standards of this department and understands what a great community he's going to be joining here in the coming months. Noah Stummis from Eden Valley Watkins High School. This young man was at camp this summer playing tight end, offensive line, and defensive end. And when Coach Kramer walked out to camp and saw this young man standing there, I think he started licking his chops. A 6'6" body at 220 pounds. He's excited to get this young man in the weight room and build this kid's frame and to be a great offensive lineman for us here at NDSU. A young man that stands out in every sport that he plays and understands the tradition of winning. His team went on to win the 2A state championship this year, went 13-0. And in Noah's 4 years as a high school football player, he went a combined 38-4 in his career. So understands the expectations of winning football games and excited for him to bring that to the Ram room. And another one with ties to the program. He is cousins of Jacob Streit and Joshua Streit. Jacob, a tight end for us here at NDSU, and Joshua on the basketball team here at NDSU. Going back to the state of North Dakota, Nate Tosted. Nate's a 6'5", 254-pound offensive lineman from out in Rolette, North Dakota. He's a nine-man football player of the year here in the state of North Dakota. Another one that when Coach Polasek got on the phone, you can hear the excitement in this young man's voice to be a member of the Bison. Nate's got strong ties to the program with his dad being a former football player here, his mom getting her degree from NDSU, and his sister as a current student here at NDSU. This young man was made for the Ram room. He is excited to get here and get to work with Coach Kramer, Coach Larson, and the rest of our offensive staff. Fun story that I'll throw in on Nate. Probably one of my favorite stories in this recruiting class. Many got to hear it after he won the state championship this last year, but talk about setting goals. Back in elementary school, Nate told everyone in his class that he was going to go on to win a state championship, and in his senior year, he went on to do that and was the player of the year at the same time. So pretty special young man and very driven. So excited for him to take that same passion here to NDSU and hopefully help us keep up our winning tradition here. Next on the list, back in the state of Minnesota, from Byron, Minnesota, Zach Vanderpool, a 6'5", 227-pound defensive end, young man with a large frame, has a ton of potential for what he can do for our defensive line for the Alley Cats here. A captain his senior year, playing on both sides of the ball, and then also handling the long snapping responsibilities at Byron. So a young man that hardly came off the field and ended up going on to win District Defensive Player of the Year for Byron High School. Three-sport athlete and comes from a program that understands playing great defense. His high school at Byron put up great numbers, and so excited to have him joining Code Green and what he's going to bring to that room. Staying in the state of Minnesota, Will Washington, a corner from Apple Valley High School in the Twin Cities, a 6'1", 192-pound corner with very long, rangy limbs. Young man that came to camp and just continued to impress Coach Walker and the rest of the defensive staff in his time there. A 3-year starter, a team captain, and a young man that hardly came off the field at any skill position on either side of the ball for his high school this last year, and ended up winning team MVP and co-defensive player of the year in the conference. And so extremely excited about what Will's going to bring to that corner room. Another young man that got the opportunity to play in the Minnesota All-Star game down at US Bank Stadium a couple weeks ago with some of his teammates. Next on the list from down in Omaha, from Millard West High School, Jackson Williams. Jackson's a 5'11", 170-pound wide receiver, and another one that when you look at his stats, they'll blow you away in his all-purpose stats that he's put up, not only as a wide receiver, but as a running back and kick and punt returner. Jackson's a young man that when the ball's in his hands, he's an electric player. And excited to see what he's going to be able to do and the contributions that he's going to be able to make in multiple different levels within our program. Fun anecdote on Jackson. Jackson's a 4-sport athlete. Jackson competes in football, basketball, baseball, and he's also on the bowling team. And he is very prideful in his bowling career. And so, if there's any challengers out there in the Fargo area, I'm sure he'd be more than willing to compete in a little bit of bowling when he gets up here on campus in just a couple months. Next, from down in Frisco, Texas, Donovan Woolen, a 6'3", 205-pound outside linebacker. Donovan, an outstanding athlete from down in the state of Texas, a 3-year starter and a 2-time captain for his high school, for Wakeland High School. Was also an all-district player in back-to-back years in his junior and senior year. Donovan will be early enrolling here at NDSU. He'll be up here in just a couple of weeks and getting with Coach Kramer and the rest of our staff here, and excited to have him joining the team for spring ball and starting the race to maturity early in his career. Excited for the future that he can have getting that early start. And last but not least, from down in Pierre, South Dakota, Jet Zabel, obviously a familiar name. Jet's older brother, Gray, playing offensive line here at NDSU. Jet plays all over the field for Pierre High School. Helped them go on to win their 7th straight state title. And he made sure to let Gray know that he now has the most state championship rings in the household. After that one was won. But Jet is do whatever it takes for his high school team. Many saw that Jet threw a 99-yard touchdown pass in the state championship game, and so excited about the athlete that we're bringing in from down in South Dakota, the 2023 Midco Sports Class 2A Player of the Year in the state of South Dakota, and an unbelievable career that he put on at Pierre High School, and so excited to have him joining us. So with that, love to open it up to questions for myself and Coach Polasek that anyone may have.
You having coached at NDSU before, when talking to those recruits, was that somewhat of a comforting factor that you kind of had an idea what this place was like, as opposed to maybe a coach who'd never been involved with this program at all?
Yeah, you're talking about the guys coming in. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I think there were a lot of things that were in line that were easy to get across to these kids, to just maybe relax them a little bit or calm them. The fact that I was coming back to a job, my DNA, my philosophies were developed here. Being able to say, hey, this ain't going to be a wholesale, change in our thought process and our approach, how we practice, seemed to be very comforting to those guys. And then the flip side of that, there are a few guys, it wasn't complicated at all because I was recruiting them at the previous school that I was at. And so some of the things we were going to talk about were going to be pretty similar. And I even was able to mention, Coach Bull and Coach Bull's start here. And guys, this is going to be all right.
Recruited at Wyoming, you know them. Nate, Coy, you know them well. Was that an easy phone call, I assume, then?
Well, yeah, Coy won't say as much as Nate. And Nate is hard to talk to because you think you're talking to Cordell Volson. I mean, when you guys hear this guy talk for the first time, and hopefully it's sooner than later, as a player, it's wild. I mean, if you put a recording of Cordell's voice and his, it's very similar. And an interesting story, or really, I don't know, funny, just entertaining. But so Nate came out and visited Wyoming, and Coach Bull knocks on the door before I'm going to kind of wrap things up as the area recruiter with him. He said, this is going to be tough. I mean, his mom's showing me pictures, and he's got a Bison jersey on. And then so once I was able to go out to his school and stuff, it was funny because I think me and Dan Larson and I had a conversation as I was walking to the school. I'm like, I'm going to drive 1,800 miles today to get in position for tomorrow. I don't know if this is worth it. And you know what? It was. You just never know. And so some of those guys, yeah, it was a real simple call, and there was some excitement. Not that I don't think any one of them were happy that Matt was leaving, but just comfort and, a familiar face.
Difficult calls with guys on Monday that you had to make to reassure them?
I know, again, the staff did a really good job. I keep coming back to it. Like a lot of classes before, a lot of kids, I think the families and the student athletes chose NDSU for the big picture, for the next 5 years, for next year, for academics, the community, the football program, the winning tradition. And so, again, there were a few that I'm not sure it just would have had that big of impact. Now if there wasn't a coach in place and those kind of things, maybe they would have swayed and wanted to wait and then open up their options. And that's risky this time of year.
You were fighting teams off once Matt announced that there were other schools trying to swoop in?
I don't know if we were fighting them off per se, but I think there was, definitely a concerted effort from our staff to make sure that we kept those connections. And, as Coach alluded to, probably one of the biggest things was that, no kid in this class was just recruited by one person. It was a staff effort from start to finish with all of these kids. They had relationships up and down the halls of our office. And so it made that process fairly simple when all of us could reach out and continue to connect with these young men and reaffirm that, the standards and the traditions that are at NDSU that were set years before any of us were here, were going to stay in place, with Coach P stepping in.
Into it a little bit ago, but with the amount of local guys that you guys brought in and, from the state of North Dakota, how important is it for you guys to kind of keep that foothold here in your home state?
Yeah, I think, you've heard us say it over and over again, the best players in the state need to play at the best university in the state. And so that's extremely important whenever we go into any recruiting class. Not only winning Fargo, but winning the state, winning the Midwest is always going to be a major emphasis for our staff and always going to be where our foothold is. And it's great to have young men from outside of maybe our original footprint finding ways, to join this class. But the Midwest and the state of North Dakota is always going to be at the forefront of what we do.
Just over, these past couple of days, you get introduced and then you immediately have to start calling guys. When you joined this close to signing day, kind of what were some of the biggest challenges for you over these past
I think it's just that. No matter what, we put a lot of time in as coaches, but there are points in the day as a coordinator or as a position coach, you come up for air and you might watch some NFL cut-ups this time of year or some cut-ups of your own stuff. It's been wake up and then like nonstop communication. That it's just different. I don't know if it would classify it as difficult or overwhelming. I haven't gotten to that point, but it's been nonstop and been on the gas. And you're meeting so many different individuals that are at so many different stages of their career or their place in the organization. And so just, being sharp and trying to stay true to yourself and trying to paint a picture of what the vision looks like. I almost want to say it's been enjoyable, but working 12, 13 hours of straight communication is difficult.
Is it odd to look at a list like this for North Dakota State and not see a Wisconsin kid?
Oh,
And can I assume that will change quickly?
No, I knew I was hoping that somebody would bring that up because I remember getting the fist slammed on the table. Hey, Tim and Nick, you guys, need to pick it up. Okay, and that was, the hammer, right? I said, well, Coach, we had Joel Schobert on campus. I liked him. We had a running back that ended up at Michigan. We liked some guys that just didn't come together. And I think Joel Schobert, is still up there with TJ Watt. And he walked on at Wisconsin and became, so it just happens. But I think you guys would have to check me on this. I think that's probably 2 times in the last 15 years Because the first job I had as a recruiter here was part of the deal of me coming here. I said, Coach, I just want to keep growing and learning as a recruiter. Okay, so that was part of the $6,000, right? He gave me 25 schools in the Green Bay area. And Eddie Beeson, God, that's going to be awesome for Eddie. I mean, Eddie didn't have a great career here. He tore his knee up twice. But Eddie out of Menasha was the first guy I helped to recruit. And Coach gave me 25 schools, and we found one, and then obviously that grew. But it's not disappointing. Our areas are our areas, and then we'll get back in there. And I'll be honest, at the University of Wyoming, I was going to struggle to find a Wisconsin kid, to get signed. We thought Minnesota was really strong this year. Obviously, North Dakota State felt the same way. And, we're still working. We're still working.
Working, no quarterback on this list. I think that it's always kind of a staple, like every class should have a QB. Is that something where you're maybe working, the early signing period is not over? Or is it like, we might have this conversation in February?
I think we had a really good discussion yesterday. I think this day and age, the new stuff, I think it's important to try to take a quarterback every year. Okay, if you have 4 on scholarship and we can recruit a walk-on, I'm pretty comfortable with that. That's going to be something when we get back I get back on the 28th. We'll address that as far as, do we need one? How do we want to attack this? There's some really good quarterbacks that are getting overlooked now. The quarterback position in roster management has changed a lot. High school kids not as many high school quarterbacks are getting recruited, and there's some good players out there. And so we're always going to look to continue to add pieces. But right now I would be comfortable with the 4 based on the report Randy gave. I mean, these guys are all heading in the right direction. And, if the right one pops up, we could reach.
Change, is there blood in the water? Is that a FBS thing when they know that kids may be vulnerable?
Yeah, no, I think Ian did a good job of answering the question on his end, and what the staff had to do. But there was a crack in there, right? The door's open for, 48 hours or 60. What was the total time? A week? Okay. Time has flown. A week, the door is open and there's a crack. Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that you just didn't see more social media activity on our guys. I would think that some people did some backdoor channeling of reaching out to kids, and those kids said they weren't interested, so then nothing happened social media wise. But yeah, that you look for any advantage or any edge you can get in recruiting, and you try to step through the door or kick that door down.
I suppose Coach Deno is fine. This class, when you just look at it, honest to God, on a sheet of paper, is long. Is that kind of obviously you're looking for the biggest, strongest, and fastest that you can, but in this day and age of the portal, of NIL, is it maybe more advantageous for a school like NDSU? And I don't want to necessarily use the word project, but that's kind of what it is. It's like, okay, what could this kid be in 3 years as opposed to maybe a high school senior that you're looking to pop right into the lineup?
Yeah, I think that's always going to be an emphasis for us. And, Coach alluded to it, kind of in his opening comments, and as we went through these guys, probably one of our big emphases at the end of the day is the multi-sport athletes, the competitive tradition that they have. How many sports are they competing in? What do they look like when they go out and play in a basketball game? What are they like on the track? What are they like on the baseball diamond? Jackson Williams is a great example. Jackson Williams, a kid that just ultra competitor, wants to be involved in every sport possible, even bowling. He's a competitive kid. And with that, we were able to find some competitive kids with length. And so length is always going to be a contributing factor, always going to be something we look for. Big, long athletes, but that athlete piece always has to be there, that competitive nature that they have.
And I would add to that too, it's interesting, there is a trend pushing towards, being single-minded, focusing on one sport. And obviously those guys can be great too. But it seems like every time you watch a game in NFL, this guy was a multi-sport. The development piece, it seems to be greater when they are multi-sport athletes. And then you have that combination of length. I really like that moving forward. Developmental guys will always be the foundation of this program. And there's just such great examples of that. Cody Mock, Cordell Volson. the biggest difference between Nate Tested and Cordell is that Nate's actually playing O-line and doing the physical traits and the physical skills that it takes to do those things. And the one thing as I was sitting here listening to it, in the past sometimes we've kept out, the potential walk-on guys and going through that list. I'm okay with the extra 5 to 10 minutes. Those guys are every bit as important nowadays as they've ever been, supplementing the roster and the importance of potentially going on scholarship at some point with the transfer portal.
Did you run an NDSU at Wyoming? Was it all the time? How often would you run in the recruiting cycle?
You know what I tried to do was figure that out really fast, like how much, going head to head and competing never is fun when it's one of your best friends and it's Gazer or Dan Larson anyway. But if a kid visited Wyoming, you knew you had a shot. So there had to be proof, and I wish it happened more. And so going head to head with FCS schools in this region, period, was difficult. It's a challenge when you go into a region and you got to get on an airplane and fly, opposed to being able to drive, period. That can become a deciding factor.
Expound on it. I look, I see 263 linebackers, 6'4", 6'5" DN, 6'1" corner, 6'2" safety. Is it hard to find those type of guys at the FCS level? And is that rare? Or did you just kind of happen that they were kind of those bigger frames?
Well, I think, it always comes down to, in your areas, what's out there. But I think when you talk about any of those young men that you're kind of, referencing towards, all those guys came to camp and really earned their opportunity. And so I think in that combination of not only their length, but then going out and proving it on the field at camp. As we talked about in one of our first staff meetings, camp is still always going to be a major contributing factor to what we do here at NDSU and finding the right kids. Because to be able to come to a camp and compete for 3 days, that proves a lot. And so when you find those long bodies as you're going through registration on that first day and you see the big kid standing out over everybody else that's in line getting ready to register, you make sure that you put a star next to that kid's name and see how he competes for the next 3 days.
I think length at the skill position has just changed so much. They're just, there was a time, I think, a 6'1" kid that was a good athlete just, naturally always gravitated towards maybe safety or receiver. And some of the kids, they're really getting an opportunity to play 7-on-7 and cover people. And I know Lewis Walker would like to stay with that trend as much as possible. Big, tall guys. A vision just popped in my head playing Penn State. Like, I think they could cover the football field down, just reaching their arms out. And you start thinking about the inches that we need, and they're all around us, right? It gets tough the longer those DBs are, the longer the linebackers are. And so I thought the staff did a really good job of identifying some length and then seeing there's a developmental piece here that we can work with, and they'll get better.
You weren't here for 98% of building this class, but I think one of the biggest fears fans have in today's day and age of the portal is, all right, well, we're going to do a great job with this kid for 3 years, and then he's going to, once he produces on the field. How do you kind of balance, okay, let's just get the most talented individuals that we can through these doors with, we better try and make sure that the culture thing is a fit so that there's a chance this kid plays 4 years of football here?
I think that's just it. I think we just have to make it really hard. I think I said on the radio show last night, if a kid gets an opportunity or is thinking about leaving, he's going to come through those doors and it's going to be a lot of emotion, a lot of tears, a lot of thoughts about teammates, this community. It's really tough on them. I think there's got to be some places where that's not the case, and so I don't think you try to balance it. We're always going to try to bring in the most talented guys that do fit culturally in the locker room, no matter what. And I guess we'll deal with those things as they pop up. The culture piece in that locker room being really tight will always give us a chance to win. Without that, I think we'd be talking about the other side of things, talent acquisition and okay, this guy can do this and this and this, but we're not sure what's going on when he's away from the building. That's a little bit scary.
Get through signing day, that was the first thing you wanted to cover. There's still some other irons in the fire, it would seem, with the, whether it's transfer portal coming or going, whether it's the coaching staff, NIL stuff. What's the next emphasis now? Is there one thing, or is it all the things I mentioned or more, or what?
Prime rib, a Christmas tree, my wife. I mean, that's coming up. That's around the corner. No, we have one more good work day tomorrow. I will fly back and put together as big a suitcase as I can because I plan on being here for at least a full month. All right. And then you try to get a house in order around, a couple more conversations that need to take place on the staff. I do like the amount of information that's been exchanged. I really appreciate the players' information and their honesty with a lot of things. And I'd like to continue to move that forward. But then the portal, that will just never stop. This thing's always on. We're always getting updates. We're always getting contacts, and we'll continue to try to push, a couple, 2, 3, 4 guys to come visit, over the 3rd through the 7th of January. And then we start school. And those guys got to enroll, and they got to be academically accepted, and they got to be in position with living quarters to start class. And so there's most certainly going to be a little break with Christmas, but the transfer portal recruiting will never stop, and also solidifying the staff and keep moving that forward.
Starters that we know of that have entered the portal yet, is that a good sign for NDSU, or how do you?
I think it's excellent. I don't know if it was in conversation or it came up in the press conference, but some of these guys will look you in the eyes that, in my past, and coach, everything's good, man. I'll see you after Christmas. We'll get back here for second semester, and then they're right in Colleen's office. Okay, how do I go in the portal? How do we do this? And they're 88 and out the gate. And then you have other guys, that'll come in and want to have a really good conversation about the vision for them. And we don't see eye to eye, and they make decisions. And then I think there's a third piece that's no fun at all. It's, letting a kid know, or a prospect or a player on the team, that, hey, we need more out of you. If we don't get more out of you, like, how do you want to be seen as a college athlete? Do you want to play? Do you really want to get on the field? Because it's going to be difficult. And hopefully we don't have too many of those conversations, but those take place as well.
4 guys on the signing day list. Which jumps off the page for you more? Playing basketball and wrestling at the same time, or champion bowler?
Okay, that used to be easy for me. I think somebody asked me that years and years ago. And I would like the basketball player, the feet, and you get to see him jump and explosive. But then I got the coach in 109, 5 state champions out of the state of Iowa. And so I'm really split. Tristan Wirfs and Linderbaum, those guys, Wirfs he just loves the one-on-one confrontation of body positioning, leverage and angles. Tyler Linderbaum's ability to play up underneath people and scramble and get himself out of bad situations. Multi-sport athletes is what we're looking for. I love the drive and the determination it takes to be a wrestler, because that's got to be internal to me. I've never wrestled, but I love that mentality. And then the team concept of fitting in a team in basketball, and being active over the summer, and all the skill sets it takes to run up and down the floor, especially for a big guy, get off the ground twice for a rebound. Those are all things that can really help us in the evaluation process. And I think it tells you a lot about a kid's character and want to and activity level. We want guys with big bounce, like bounce around the football field. When I say that, I always think about Andrew Bonnet. He just had this bounce about him. And so those things are just critical to the evaluation. So is shot put. So is discus. So is long jump. Triple jump ain't easy. I really like the 110-meter hurdles. I think maybe sometimes the 110-meter or 100-meter dash is a little bit overemphasized. Anything to add, Ian?
No, I think you hit it right on the head there. I mean, it comes back to, just that competitive spirit the coach is talking about. The kids that, again, on this list, not only leaders in football, but leaders in multiple sports. What are they like when they're not just playing their primary sport? How are they carrying themselves through everything that they do? And you look up and down this list, it's not only other sports, but it's academia for these kids as well. I think Jet is listed in his bio. He's in the chess club as well. I mean, it's just, you got Jackson on the bowling team. It's just competitors in everything that they do across the board. That's what we're looking for at the end of the day.
And I think Jet is a classic, really good example of, getting into areas and continuing to pound away. I saw him as a sophomore with the quarterback that's at Ohio State. And I remember asking the coach, well, what about that guy? He goes, Coach, you'll be back. His brother's a hell of an athlete. Don't worry about him now. And then when I did see him again, just the growth and the maturation of, growing and developing into a man.
Saying bowling made you most excited that you've let down the entire state of Wisconsin? That
Well-
you're going to be like totally deposed now from your home state by not getting excited
will
about
say
bowling?
this. Yeah, Mike. I got to talk to him today. He said, I'm going bowling. I said, well, what's your high score? He said 218, and I said, mine's still a little bit better. So it was a pretty good exchange.